Greetings, everyone, and welcome to Mega Life 21 Mayhem. I am your host for Mega Life 21 Mayhem, James Piranha Madonna of Mega Life 21, the hardest hitting internet talk radio station on the planet. And I am broadcasting from our studio here at the Newsletter Censored Research Center in northeastern New Jersey. And I am very proud to announce that we have right now on location the one and only Masked Bob. That is right. You've seen Masked Bob on the internet. You've seen me interview him on public access, Time Warner Public Access Channel 23 up in Hudson Valley, New York. And he is on the internet. And I did a very informative interview with Masked Bob on the subject of public mask wearing and the laws that prohibit people from wearing masks in public. Now, Masked Bob is called Masked Bob because he loves masks of all different kinds, but only high quality masks. And he has gotten some heat. If you have seen our video, where if you go to Google and you type in Masked Bob, Mega Life 21, whatever, you'll see the video. If you listen to his video, you will hear his sort of editorial rebuttal on the discrimination against public mask wearing, and then you will get a heads up on what this show is about. Now, he's on location from his laboratory or his office in Hawthorne, sir? Haledon, I'm sorry, in Haledon, New Jersey, which is in Passaic County. And as you can see, we have a lovely photo of Masked Bob wearing one of his best masks. Bob, how are you doing today? How are you feeling?
Okay, I'm feeling fine.
Okay, now, we were discussing off the air about, I just want to talk about a subject that is important, is of great interest to Masked Bob, as well as my partner that does the radio show with me, the Reverend Dr. William J. Eisenman. And that is the subject of the plight and struggle of the disabled in the United States. Now, what a lot of people don't realize is that these disabled people, Masked Bob, that are living on a fixed income, whether it be SSI, which is Supplemental Security Income, whether it be Social Security Disability, they are told that they could get a part-time job and they can work and they do not have to fear losing their disability check or their supplemental security income. They can work part-time without fear and they can still collect their check. Well, guess what happens to many people that I personally know and that I interviewed? They get lied to by the government. They receive a letter in the mail called the Ticket to Work and Self-Sufficiency Program, and they get the part-time job, and they keep the part-time job for a little while, and lo and behold, they get a letter in the mail that says, we have to reevaluate your case. Please report to the Social Security Administration because you have worked for a certain amount of time, you have gotten a job, you're working part-time, and we feel that you are able to support yourself, which is a big joke because the person might be working in a fast food restaurant and he or she might just have a part-time job, making maybe minimum wage. So how on earth can anybody support themselves? You know, I mean, what is your take on it?
My take?
Your take on what I just said.
Yeah, I would agree. I would say that this discrimination against people with disabilities, in particular, in my case, Asperger's syndrome. When you have Asperger's syndrome, it's especially tough in the job market because you're too disabled to work in the mainstream, and you're too able to work at sheltered handicap workshops. And
Wow.
it puts you in that middle position where you're not handicapped enough to be handicapped and not able enough to be fully able, so you get stuck in the cracks. And people who have Asperger's syndrome are discriminated against socially because they don't think and talk and like the same stuff the way that other people do.
Right.
So they're thought of as second class.
Well, that's usually what happens in our cold, selfish, materialistic, corporatist society. If you have a disability, they automatically, regardless what your disability is, or handicap, I think the word they prefer to use the word handicap, I think. What they do is they pigeonhole you into a group. They stereotype and pigeonhole and put all handicapped people or disabled people, into this group in a room, and you can have people in that room that have skills, are exceptional in certain areas. Like, for instance, the movie Rain Man with Dustin Hoffman. He was autistic, right? And he was a mathematical genius when it came to winning money in the casino in Las Vegas. So there are people who have disabilities that may excel in certain areas, but what do? They pigeonhole you and they put you in a large group with people that may have no skills or severe mental disabilities or physical disabilities with nothing wrong with their mind. A person could be physically disabled. They could have, let's say, post-polio syndrome, and they could be an absolute genius. But the thing is, the disabled are collecting a fixed income for a reason. They may be in the middle, like you're saying, a mass Bob. They may be in the crack, fell in the crack. They're not disabled enough to be considered totally disabled, but they're not able enough to support themselves. So they're somewhere in limbo, right, in the middle. Okay. So, I just think that I wonder why I'm hearing my own voice. Maybe, gee, that's strange. I'm actually hearing my own voice. But anyway, the best thing for disabled people is, honest to God's truth, don't let others make you feel guilty for living on a fixed income. Don't let the conservative Republicans make you feel guilty for collecting your fixed income. Realize the disability, and for your best interest, do not get a job if you have a diagnosed disability, because they will use your part-time job to take your SSI or your Social Security disability check away from you. Trust me, they will do it. And they sucker you with this ticket to work and self-sufficiency program. And there's a lot of disabled people, Mass Bob, that feel guilty that allow these conservative politicians and these conservatives in the United States that have a lot of money, that don't want to pay any taxes and have no compassion for the poor. These individuals have made the disabled feel guilty about not working and collecting their fixed income. You know what I mean? So say anything you want about what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I would agree with you. That sounds very good to me. Like, for instance, there are biblical principles that say if you don't work, you don't eat, and man should work. In principle, that's true. People want to work. The problem is, though, is that the rich people and the people at the top and the employers, they take those biblical principles and they stretch them out of proportion, and they use them as an excuse to exploit or overwork or underpay employees in general and disabled employees in particular. And when employees do that to that extent, then it makes people in general and disabled people in particular not want to work. So in other words, it's like you make a person feel lazy if he doesn't work as much as a specific person wants him to work, and it'll backfire and it'll only make him want to be lazier. So along with the principle that we should work, the other side of the coin is those who are willing to work, if there's a job, they should work. If there's no job available or no one wants to hire them, then they should get a fixed income. So,
correct. Well, the Bible,
what I'm
Bible.
saying is that the principle of working to make a living is fine in theory, but it's twisted and distorted by the rich, the powerful, the Republicans, and the conservatives. And you're made to feel lazy if you don't work excessive hours for low pay.
Exactly. But the Bible also talks about people not being lazy, but the Bible in the Old Testament, but the Bible also talks about having compassion for the needy and the poor, and for the rich to give to the poor and help the poor. The Bible is loaded with information about the rich giving to and helping the poor. So, and compassion, showing compassion. So, the conservative elitists, they pick and choose what parts of the Bible they want to use to defend their selfish, greedy agenda, and they twist the meanings, they misinterpret the Bible, they add things to the Bible, anything to justify their greed, as far as I'm concerned, But that's basically it. The problem, Master Bob, is with human nature, because from what I hear, greed and cold-heartedness and mean-spiritedness and the evils of capitalism are all over the world. And I know you had a bad experience working in one of those. What was it, like a division of? It was a rehabilitative workshop, or it was just a workshop for the handicapped, for the disabled people that wanted to get a job. It was like a halfway between. Was it part of the state, or was it an independent company that you worked for?
The handicap workshop that I used to work for is a private company, but they get support from the politicians of the state and everybody else. So the politicians and the corporations use the foundation as a cheap labor market.
Okay, it wasn't the Division of Vocational Rehabilitation. It was a private company that got government funding to help. And I think, according to the story you told me, they had a sweatshop with unfavorable working conditions and unfavorable treatment of the disabled workers that were in the workshop. And all it wasn't a therapeutic rehabilitative experience, but it was an abusive exploitative experience where they were using the disabled as cheap, below minimum wage labor. It might stop me if I'm wrong, Mass Bob. That's basically what it was, right?
That's correct. But when you say sweatshop, I want to clarify that a little bit.
Okay.
It wasn't a sweatshop in terms of hours, because the workday was only 5 to 6 hours.
Right.
And it wasn't a sweatshop in terms of physical conditions, because it was a clean air conditioned place.
Oh, okay.
But it was a sweatshop in terms of pay, and it was a sweatshop in terms of the treatment of its employees. And the biggest complaint I had about that place was the fact that the bosses treated some employees better than the others. More specifically, the older employees that were friends with the boss were treated better, and the newer employees that were not friends with the boss were generally treated worse, and I was one of the newest employees.
So it was office politics.
The bosses and the old employees I didn't get along with, and it caused me to flare up in my temper, and I ended up getting fired. But I had no problem with the newer employees who were not friends with the bosses, and if it was just the newer employees alone, I had no problems with them, but I had problems with the bosses and the older employees who were friends with the boss.
Wow, so you were a victim of office politics, just like anybody else might be a victim of it. It's a form of corruption, you know. I mean, cronyism, I think they call it, is when somebody who's in position of authority gives special treatment to certain people that he or she likes because of the favors that they might have done for them. You know, curry favor with somebody who's kissing their ass, who is far up their ass, you know, so on and so on. So you were a victim of that. But all in all, what was happening was people that were working in that workshop, they usually came from living on a fixed income, right? And they got a job at the workshop. And then they went from eventually some of the people went from the workshop into the private sector, like they were getting regular jobs, right? More or less.
That's only true for a few people. Many of them are like the rest of their life, dead-end jobs.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And also, before I worked at the handicapped workshop, I was under the assumption that bosses and teachers who work with the handicapped were kinder and more compassionate and more gentle than bosses and teachers in the mainstream world. But after being at the handicapped workshop and after talking with a handicapped teacher and a handicapped vocational specialist, I'm finding the reverse. Bosses, teachers, and counselors who work with the handicapped often have a tougher attitude than the same people who work in the mainstream, the reverse of what I previously expected.
Interesting.
And after finding that out, I'm sure glad, even though I have Asperger's syndrome, I'm glad that I was in mainstream classes in school and not in special education, seeing what I see now.
Well, yeah. Well, they definitely have an agenda. They definitely have an agenda, and that is exploitation of handicapped people to get below minimum wage work done. And there are other exploitive scams, employment scams going on in America, just short of slavery. And some of them are called, let's see, we have internships, where senior students from school would get a job for maybe a few months or so, and they work for free in order to get school credits. And then when they graduate, the company gets another truckload or whatever, busload of senior students during the following semester, and they get more free labor and more free labor, and it's a perpetual supply of free labor through these students, through these senior students. Now, granted, the senior students get hands-on experience. Granted, they get college or school credit, but it's still free labor for the company, for the employer. Another one, Bob, is something called the H-1B workers visa, where an immigrant gets sponsored by a company and they come to this country and they work through an H-1B workers visa. And I am absolutely positive that these H-1B immigrants, unless they are super exceptional professionals in their country, an absolute brilliant, I would say 9 times out of 10, these immigrants are paid very little money compared to their American counterparts. Again, cheapo labor. And then you have an article I saw recently about they passed a law where illegal immigrants are not going to be hassled with minor crimes like traffic tickets and traffic violations. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm reading the article, gee, how come all of a sudden they're being so nice to illegal immigrants? And it finally dawned on me. When the more illegal immigrants that are in this country illegally, the cheaper the workforce is for corporate America. They can get off paying these people even less than the other people I just mentioned. So more exploitation, more greed. What's next? Legalizing slavery? I mean, give me a break. Give me a break. So there are many scams out there, Mass Bob. Exploiting people that are handicapped, exploiting poor people, people in desperation, because the job market is practically non-existent there. They might tell you there's jobs out there, but the jobs that are out there, Mass Bob, are jobs that require a lot of experience plus a lot of credentials, and they're very nitpicky. There's really not that many jobs. Look, I heard stories where a doctor has to sleep on his friend's sofa and live in with his friend because of the economy. He just can't afford his own place as a doctor. Now, if you have former executives with college degrees and you have physicians that are in hot water financially, the average American doesn't stand a chance, in terms of the job market. I mean, if people with tremendous, outstanding resumes can't find a job, how is the average Joe Sixpack going to find a permanent full-time job? You know what I mean, Mass Bob?
Yeah, that's so true. And to cap everything off, as bad as things are, what you said, here's something that's even worse than this previous stuff that both of us said.
Right.
What's happening now is they put people in jail or prison for petty crimes, and then after they're convicted, they use them for slave labor. Because if you're a convicted criminal in prison or jail, you're legally a slave. The government can force you to work for free. And that's increasing by the minute. And you'll notice in the 60s, the government needed a lot of college-educated people. Today, the country needs a lot of prison slave labor. So in the 60s, America was investing more in colleges. Today, America is investing more in prisons and jails.
That is very true. I'm glad you brought that up, Mass Bob. Very important. Yes, there is another conspiracy going on, exploiting convicts to work for free. And you know where that came from, Mass Bob? It came from the conservative right-wing Republicans. Newt Gingrich used to talk about this as a way of, he used to mention, it's funny the way he mentioned it. He said, children of color, African American or Hispanic children that live in the ghetto should be forced to even be a janitor in a school or something, and clean toilets or mop the floor to help pay for their food stamps and their welfare. Give me a break. Now the Republicans are talking about child labor, exploiting children, minors, and forcing them to work for their, for the little bit of stinking welfare that they get, because the government allowed businesses to outsource all of our American jobs, so their mothers and fathers that are poor can't find a job. So of course the kids have to go on social services, but Newt Gingrich actually wants to put children to work cleaning friggin' toilets and mopping, bathrooms. You think kids are going to want to do that? Give me a break. I don't know.
It sounds to me the right-wing Republicans want to turn America into another China.
Well, they're bringing back fascism. What they want is a global plutocracy or corporatocracy. There's a video on my Facebook profile written by a pretty intelligent guy. His name escapes me, but the name of the book is called Occupy World Street. And he's a Canadian, and he lives in Copenhagen, Denmark, I believe, with his wife. His wife's Danish. And he talks about what's going on. That, they want to create a one world government, and they want to remove money, paper money, and have everybody just have a card, like similar to a debit card, and all purchases are made electronically, and the world government would be able to monitor everybody's location and what they buy and how they live their lives and how they spend their money, but there won't be money. So they want to create this one world government, and of course, the wages will be close to slavery because the wages are getting lower and lower and lower, but the cost of living in relation to the average wage is getting higher and higher. So the gap between the cost of living, which is ever rising, Mass Bob, and the average wage is just getting wider and wider and wider. The gap is just getting so wide that no wonder people are losing their homes to foreclosure, and people don't have money to feed their kids, and then you got people living in tents in Lakewood, New Jersey, and they want to evict the people from the woods. What do you think of that, Mass Bob? Evict people from the woods that are living in a tent?
Then what's going to happen to them is they get evicted from the woods, then they won't be able to afford any place to live, then they'll wind up sleeping on the streets, then they'll get arrested for loitering, then they'll go to jail, and then when they're in jail, they'll be charged with some crime, and then after they're charged with some crime, they'll be stuffed into an overcrowded prison, mistreated, and forced to work like a slave. That's what's going to happen in the end.
And there you have more slave labor, more exploitation. I mean, come on. American veterans who put their lives on the line in Iraq and Afghanistan, who may have had their legs blown off, or if not worse, living in tents in Florida. It's despicable in America. This is how they treat veterans. It's despicable. It's unheard of that anybody in the United States of America should be forced to live in a tent in the woods, especially a veteran. So the end times are here, Mass Bob. The end times are definitely here. I know you hear a lot about end time Bible prophecy when you go to Bible study with the Renaissance man Ken Create, I believe.
Yeah.
You guys talk a lot about prophecy?
Yeah, we do.
Okay, good. That's good.
And I've also noticed that up until 1970, a person could make a slightly above poverty living on minimum wage. I've noticed the cost of living started rising faster than wages and income when we had that first gas shortage in 1973, when you had to wait online to buy gas, and the price of gas popped up from 35 cents a gallon to $1 a gallon. That was the beginning of when the cost of living started rising faster than wages and income. And that was basically the beginning of the economic downturn for the average American worker.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, once gas was on a upwards spiraling increase with no decline, and it just kept on going up, and then it was $3 a gallon, $4 a gallon, $5, of course, in the cities. Yeah, and that's a good barometer of the economy and the cost of living is the price of gas, and of course, property taxes and taxes on the middle class are what's killing America because, first of all, the true consumer and the backbone of the U.S. economy has always been the middle class, the small business owners, the mom and pop stores, not the elitists. The elitists are not the backbone of the economy. The elitists are not the job creators because they outsource American jobs. And the elitists, the 1% or the top 20%, do not pay any taxes at all. Thanks to Ronald Reagan, who shifted the tax burden from the rich to the middle class in the 1980s. So the middle class have all the tax burden now, and that's why we have the birth of the Tea Party. But the problem is that the Republicans keep on blaming progressive liberal Democrats for tax and spend when reality is we have a lack of revenue problem, not necessarily a spending problem, but it's a lack of revenue because the rich don't pay any taxes at all. And oh, by the way, the social services in this country make up a tiny microscopic fraction of the budget as compared to the other waste that goes on, like the military budget, and Wall Street bailouts, in the trillions and trillions between the both of them. So social services make up a tiny fraction to help the poor and the handicapped and senior citizens and whatever. Tiny fraction of the U.S. tax budget. So, go ahead.
And then what else is going to happen is when the cost of living gets too much higher than wages and income, then the next step, the Occupy protests are going to become riots. And then when there's riots, what's going to happen is some of the rioters will be shot dead, and the ones that don't get shot dead, they'll be sent to jail, they'll be charged with rioting, and then they'll be forced into slave labor and stuffed into overcrowded prisons and mistreated. That's going to be the end result.
And more slave labor, more free labor from the people that are arrested. They have they probably have concentration camps built already.
It wouldn't surprise me. I don't have any proof of it, but if it's true, I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, well, it's a sad situation. Now, before we sign off, I would like to have you tell our public something about Asperger's syndrome for those that never heard the word before.
Asperger's syndrome is a condition that's related to mild autism. The most noticeable symptoms are poor social skills, poor communication skills, and then there's these lesser-known symptoms that are hardly mentioned. Like when you have Asperger's syndrome, you can't stand things that most people could stand. Like, for instance, I can't stand soap, and most people, soap doesn't bother them. I can't stand grease, and for most people, grease doesn't bother them. And noises that keep me awake at night don't bother the majority of people. And I get overwhelmed with too much razzle-dazzle, and then there's hypersensitivity and not being able to stand things that most people are able to stand. And between those things and poor communication and social skills, that makes it very difficult for people with Asperger's syndrome to get and keep a job. And the unemployment rate for people with Asperger's syndrome is 85%. Compared to 60% for people with physical disabilities. Okay. Because Asperger's syndrome simply don't fit in with the so-called corporate and company employment world. People with Asperger's syndrome often do fine in school and poorly at work because in school, success is dependent on intelligence and self-effort at your schoolwork. And in the job market, success is dependent not only upon doing well at your job, but it's also dependent upon good social skills, ability to compete with other people, and ability to handle stress and pressure. And people with Asperger's syndrome can't take to that, whereas in college, you don't have those factors, so you can still do well in college with Asperger's syndrome. It's like having book smarts without street smarts, to put it in simple terms, and it's terrible to live with.
Okay, yeah. So the excellent, outstanding explanation of what Asperger's syndrome is, and for those out there that are unaware of what it is, you know now from the one and only Mass Bob. And now, is there a Asperger's syndrome? Is there a national organization involved in the study and treatment of Asperger's syndrome nationwide?
I'm glad you asked that question, because several months ago I found a program for an Asperger's workshop. I called them up and I asked questions about it and printed out their pamphlet on the internet. And guess what I found out?
What?
Each 5-hour session costs $97. And if you go to the whole program, it would cost well over $1,000. And the problem is, people with Asperger's syndrome generally have much lower incomes than people without Asperger's syndrome, and they're asking for over $1,000 for a program to help Asperger's patients.
Now I have a question. Go ahead, sir.
And what I'm thinking is, again, it sounds like exploitation, because it's just like if you have cancer and you can't work, well, for that matter, you have to spend tons of money on medical care if you have cancer, but it's no different with Asperger's syndrome. You have to spend tons of money on treatment. And when I talk to the psychiatrist about all this stuff that I mentioned before, instead of saying the cure to your depression is better circumstances, better programs, more money, instead, they just want to give you a pill, and pills cost more money. That's
Okay.
strange, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Now, let me ask you, concerning what you just told me, does the Medicare that disabled people get with their Social Security disability, does that pay for, let's say, 80% of this Asperger's syndrome workshop?
I have no idea, but even if it did, it would still be a good $200, which I don't want to throw money away on stuff that may or may not do any good. That's the point.
Well,
because I'm in a position now where I'm losing money, I'm not making money, and I don't want to lose money on stuff that might not even work. I've been through too much of that before.
Right. Now, what you were telling me before about, for those that do not personally know Mass Bob, unfortunately he lost his parents and he is living in his home, the home that you grew up in?
Right.
Okay. All right. Now, you asked me a question off the air that people are telling you, well, why don't you sell the house and move into an apartment? Now, okay, if you did that and you moved into an apartment, it most likely would have to be a small, like, studio apartment, and you would have a hell of a lot more money in the bank, but I'm not sure with the increases of rent periodically, I'm not sure how long, how many years your funds would hang in there for to take care of all your needs and expenses, and also if your Social Security disability would be able to handle the rent. Let's say the rent is $700 or $800 for a studio, but then you have other expenses. You have utilities, you have cable, you have your phone, whatever, groceries. Okay, between Social Security disability and the money from the house, I mean, how many good years would that take care of? Whereas, okay, you stay at home, you have the investment value of the home, real estate, you have the investment value of the home, you have higher expenses, but the money will come back to you because it is a home that is paid for. Am I correct?
Yeah.
It's paid
I don't
for.
have to pay mortgage. I just have to pay property tax.
Right. Now, here's what you got to ask yourself. How will I be better off? Would I be better off taking my fixed income and just paying the property taxes and keep the real estate investment that is yours, or should I sell the house and hand over all that money to some landlord? You know what I mean? Let's say it's $800 a month to start for a small apartment. Hand the money over every month, count out all that money, give it to a stranger, to a landlord, and having no investment return because your real estate is now gone. Personally, I'd stay right where you are because why? For the simple reason is that the house is paid for totally and you do not have to pay mortgage. You only have to pay property taxes and I guess the water bill. So I'd say keep the house, and if you want to, you can rent out a room to somebody you know well and you can trust. You can trust that's honest, and you can trust that's going to pay you rent, like a boarder, like somebody close to you that you can trust to make a little extra cash to help you out with, let's say, the electricity, the water bill, the cable. Have that come, maybe the taxes, have that rent coming in. And but it's got to be somebody you can trust. I mean, you could do that. I don't know. I don't know how many bedrooms you got in the house, but you could rent out 1 or 2 bedrooms to somebody nice that's not going to steal from you. So it's a possibility. I say keep the house, but anyway, if you hear ringing in the background, it's things get busy at times at the Newsletter Censored Research Center in northeastern New Jersey. This is me prop. This is an imported blackthorn Irish shillelagh with the 4-leaf clovers on both sides. Authentic weapons-grade shillelagh. Now, before we sign off, Mask Bob, do you have anything to say to update us about the public mask-wearing laws?
Let's see, at the present time, where I live in Halden, New Jersey, Passaic County, and Halden have no laws against wearing masks in public places.
Right.
Where I live, it's legal. But in other states and cities and counties, it's not legal in many of them.
Really?
So in states like New York, it's illegal for groups of people to wear masks, but it's legal for individuals to wear masks. But in some states like Minnesota and Virginia, it's illegal for individuals to wear masks in public places. And believe it or not, in some states like Virginia, wearing a mask in a public place carries a bigger penalty than going around nude or naked in a public place.
Wow, really? In other words, the fine is higher with the mask wearing than indecent exposure in those areas?
Virginia, yeah.
Wow, that's incredible. That is really. They think people are gonna like rob a bank or a convenience store if they see somebody with a mask. Maybe
that's part of it, but the other part of it is a lot of these states passed mask laws originally because of the Ku Klux Klan.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Oh, I have no love for the Ku Klux Klan because I like to wear masks for fun, and they wear masks for bad purposes. Yeah. And they caused a lot of states and cities to pass laws against wearing masks in public, as well as the criminals who wear masks too.
Right. It's like some areas they allow you to raise chickens for eggs. In other areas, the ordinance says you can't have chickens. Same thing with the mask. Did you know that back in the 1990s, I was at a beach in a town called Seagirt, New Jersey, and I have a kite. It's a parachute kite, parafoil. It's nice, you know. I had the kite up. Of course, if you fly a kite at the beach, you don't have to run with it, Bob. It shoots right up like a rocket. That kite was so high up. This cop comes up to me with shorts on, like a beach cop from Seagirt, New Jersey, and says to me that I I have to pull my kite down because there's an ordinance in Seagirt, New Jersey that you can't fly kites. And I said to him, really? My kite doesn't have any solid parts in it at all. It's all parachute. I says, how am I going to hurt anybody? He says, oh no, it doesn't have to do with hurting people. It's not a potential danger. It's just that during World War II, the German U-boats or the Nazi spies sent signals to the German U-boats or whatever by raising up kites of different colors and symbols, something of that nature. It was such a preposterous, old, outdated law that was grandfathered, but they still enforced it. It took me, Bob, 20 minutes. It took me 20 minutes to pull that kite down. I was so pissed. On top of the fact that I couldn't bring any food or beverage on the beach, which was another law. So I had to be, I said, you think I'm going to be suckered to go pay $5 for a hot dog because I can't bring my cooler on the beach? You know, it's all a racket, the Jersey Shore anyway. But you understand what I mean about laws that are grandfathered, that are preposterous? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They're ridiculous laws. And in this case, it's the wearing of masks. You like to wear costumes too, right, sir?
Yeah, but costumes with masks.
Right, with masks. Well, hopefully it won't be 97 degrees, hazy, hot, and humid when you wear the costume. But like what Ken Create said, if you wear a costume at an event and somebody's paying you for it, you have to do what they want you to do. If they want you to dance around in a certain way, in other words, you can't just stand there or sit there and wave. You got to do whatever
Right.
they're telling you, the employer's telling you. So all in all, you have heard the one and only Masked Bob as seen on the internet. Check him out. Just go to Google, type in Masked Bob and Megalife 21, and you'll see Masked Bob's original video. And then, of course, he's wearing a different mask than you see now. You know, now you see the masked bad boy Bob wearing his bad boy mask. Because obviously he's not in the studio with me, so we have to show a photo of him. But it's a nice photo. From, what is it, Flickr?
Flickr, yeah.
Flickr, okay. His album is at Flickr. You can check it out. He also has, no, I think that's all you have right now that's named after Masked Bob. You were forced to use your real birth name over on Facebook, right?
Right.
Oh, that's another talk show. Facebook. You have been aggravated to no end by the antics of Facebook, right?
Correct.
They penalize everybody for trying to make friends. If you send a friends request to somebody that you don't know, they put you on probation or something for 30 days. They ban you.
Well, what they did to me was, when I make friends with people who I don't know, so-called, according to their policy, number one, they force me to use my real name instead of a fake name. Number two, they block me from making friends. And number three, the friend contacts that I already made, they erase them. And I never had that problem on MySpace, High Five, or Google, just Facebook. The others, they never gave me a problem.
But you know, a lot of people are complaining about getting banned for the 30 days. For sending friends requests. I mean, come on. They're calling people spammers. They're not spammers. What is the purpose of Facebook? It is a friends networking website for meeting new people or people that you know, also new people, And it's a networking website. It's for connecting. If you can't connect with anybody, what is the purpose of having a Facebook profile?
You got that right.
Doesn't make any sense. It's like what they said on the Star Trek movie, Captain Dunzel, something that has no useful purpose. If you can't make friends and you can't connect with anybody and you can't and you got to stick with only people that you personally know, then you're living in a small box. You can't branch out. And especially if you got a promo page. Now, thank God, here at Newsletter Censored and Mega Life 21, we have a promo page. Everybody on Facebook is allowed one free promo page that is visible to the public, which means you don't have to log into Facebook to see it. You yourself, Mass Bob, you can technically create the page for free. You can call it Mass Bob. You don't have to use your real name. You can load it with photos. You can load it with blogs. You can say anything you want. You can put videos on it. And everybody or anybody in the world can see it. They do not have to have a Facebook profile. They can just click the link, boom, you're right there. If you want to put the link on Flickr, you can do that. If you want to put the link on Tripod, you can do that. Boom. And you can call it Mass Bob or anything you desire. You get, I think, one free page. Not the group. The group is not publicly visible. It is like a free promo page. Some people call it public figure. Like, for instance, for yourself. If you want to make it all about masks and people who love them, you can call it Mass Bob, public figure. I call mine something else, a publication, because I'm promoting a newsletter, so it would be like a publication. In your case, it would most likely be either activism, pro mask wearing. You can register as an activist movement, or you can call yourself public figure Mass Bob and call it Mass Bob.
I think what I'll more likely do is within a few months or so, I'm probably going to delete my Facebook account and stick to Google Plus.
Now, Google Plus has a networking community, sir?
Yeah, on Google Plus, I enjoy that. That works so well.
Really? And do they give you a promo page on Google Plus?
No, but they let you use a fake name at least. And I never got blocked. I never got contacts erased.
But believe me, this free page that they give you, you can use any name you want. You don't have to use your real birth name. You give it a try. I mean, you already established a nice friends list over there, so
Yeah.
But anyway, listen, it's been a pleasure to have you on my show, Mega Life 21 Mayhem. I know I've done other types of shows through Mega Life 21 Mayhem, like honest craft beer reviews, and the list goes on. But this is a segment where I have you on, the one and only Mass Bob. Bob, thank you. Thank you for being with us.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye. And you take care of yourself, all right?
Yep.
All right. Bye-bye.